Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Oh, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's official.
Hey.
And I can hear it. And can you mute the YouTube, please?
I'm working on that.
Hello, everyone. We're live streaming to YouTube today, so that folks who can't join us can catch up later.
Rabbi?
Yes, I'm here, Alan.
Cheryl's having a service tonight. Is there a Zoom address to get to it?
Yes, it's the same as this one.
Okay,
Same as Shabbat.
okay, thanks.
Let me know if you want me to send you an email anyway, to make it easier.
No, I got it, thanks.
Okay, great.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. We're just waiting for folks to join us. And I was finishing my lunch, so I didn't think you all needed to see that.
Some people don't have power. Not everyone who's gonna want to.
No, we don't. We know that not everyone's going to be able to join us. West Windsor is in rough shape.
Yeah. They always seem to be.
It's interesting. I wonder if it's just because it's because of the way it's laid out with the telephone poles and the trees and they fall.
I know the synagogue, we always lose power, and then meanwhile, East Windsor or other areas, they're fine.
Yes, we still have no power at Congregation Bethany.
Yeah, yeah. I used to call the temple, when I was vice president of house. If the machine didn't go on, I knew we didn't have power.
Gotcha.
We lost it for about a half an hour.
Remind me where you are, Sherry?
East Windsor.
Okay, yeah, I know the Rabbi Nover lost it for 20 minutes in East Windsor.
Yeah, about that. I got to catch up on the courses he gave at Cage, New Cage.
Oh, nice.
He gave a few courses on technology.
Oh, cool.
So I'm going to catch up on them.
Well, if he's that good at technology, I'm going to talk to him some more.
I'll let you know.
All right.
If you want to come over, you can watch the video, the show with me.
Thank you. I think I'm busy. I can't even catch up on my own conferences. I'm trying to get out from underneath that rock.
I've got a list of classes that I didn't get a chance to take. So I'm going to try to catch up on them.
All right. Hi, Susie.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Fine. Hanging in there.
Amelia and Jonah had a FaceTime date the other day.
Oh, yeah?
There weren't a lot of words exchanged. It was quite funny.
Okay.
Jonah wanted to talk to her and then just looked at her.
I guess they were communicating through eye contact, huh?
I hope so. I hope so.
Rabbi, maybe you could post some pictures with your two kids, because it's been a while since we've seen them.
Sure.
Maybe privately, not on the website, but maybe
No, on my
somehow.
Facebook page. Also, I've been thinking about making a video, a day in the life of a rabbi. I have really good ideas. I just don't have the time to do it justice.
Mhm.
I have all the footage ready to go.
Will you have your private Facebook page?
Yes, I will post a photo because they're growing like weeds.
I see you on the synagogue page.
Here, I'll do it right now. Sean took this amazing photo of the two of them.
Oh, don't. My dog is chasing a fly.
What kind of dog do you have, Sherry?
A pity. I can show you.
Sure. I don't think I knew you had a dog.
Is she there?
Hmm. There we go.
Abba, you still have your dog?
Yes, I do.
It's my son's dog. He keeps
Oh, gotcha.
correcting me.
Yes, our dog, and she's getting more mature. You know, yellow labs stay young forever.
Yes. Hi, Vivian.
Hi.
Hey, Vivian.
Hi.
We're gonna begin in 1 more minute.
Finish your lunch.
Thanks.
What's good?
Orzo salad.
Ooh.
Why
Are
are
you-
we having lunch when we're talking about fasting? I think that's like, feels weird.
All the irony.
I think it's funny we're talking about fasting on Tu B'Av.
Yes. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that a little bit. Because today is not a fast day on the Jewish calendar.
Oh, no. It's the happiest day of the year.
But I was a little cranky last Thursday.
Yes.
Oh, Betsy's coming in. Okay. All righty, great. All right. Welcome everyone to MISHNAH TAANIT, Why We Fast. Let's just do a quick round of introductions because I imagine not everybody knows everybody else. And it's best to stay muted until you're ready to speak. And I'll just call on folks so that we can move along because it's sometimes hard to know whose turn it is. So Fran, if you'll start us off.
I don't know what you need to know, but I'm Fran Massialis, and I'm happy to be here. And I converted 5 years ago with Rabbi Blum, and she's been a very important person in my life ever since.
And I fear it's more than 5 now because it was my first year at Beth Chaim and I just hit 7.
Oh, really?
So I think it's 6 or so. Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's 6.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yep.
Evelyn, take it away.
I'm Evelyn Kurtzberg. I live with my daughter Terry and my son-in-law Larry Horowitz and 2 grandchildren here, Jillian and Lucas. And I'm happy to be here to be enriched and learn some things about my own religion.
Fabulous. Barbara and Ted.
Hi, Barbara and Ted Glasser, and we're also really happy to be here to learn something new.
Alan.
Alan Bloom, I'm glad to be here. I've looked forward to eating lunch while I'm learning about fasting.
It is a lunch and learn. Frank.
Hi, I'm Frank Lees. Fran and I are a couple, joined by Rabbi Blum 5-6 years ago. Happy to be here. I'm happy to see you every day. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, all of you.
Gary.
Hi, Sherry Barcy. I've been a member of Beth Chaim 35 years now. Wow.
Almost double high.
Almost next year.
All right.
And I'm keeping an eye over here on the pooch so she doesn't decide to go run around. We're on the porch, so
All right.
I don't
Laura.
trust her too much.
Laura, why don't you introduce yourself?
Laura Nash. I'm also a convert. It's been 20 years since I think, maybe a little less, 18, 19 years.
right. Alana, I had muted you. Let's unmute. Oh, we may have lost Alana. We'll come back. Vivian. Oh, Vivian, sorry, you're muted.
Hi, I'm Vivian Newmark and I'm unmuted.
Susie. Oh, you're
I
muted.
got it. Okay. I'm Susie Keelis. I've been a member since like 1993, so I guess that's like 27 years. I've been more of a parent member, I would say, because I joined for my kids, but then never really stopped, and now my kids are members. So,
Nice.
and my
Pat.
granddaughter and Jonah are boyfriend and girlfriend.
They are. True story. Pat.
Hi, Pat Clarefield calling in from Marlboro. I'm a Jew by choice, and I've been a member of the synagogue for, I guess, 6-7 years, something like that.
We are well represented today with folks who have chosen Judaism. Betsy.
Okay, sorry, I was reading, and so I'm completely disgusting. So, but
We're so glad you're here.
I'm here, so my backyard is better. So I think we were apart, I think 18 years, but I grew up Jewish, but my husband's not Jewish, but we raised our kids Jewish, so that's mine. And my kids are, I think have installed the values of Judaism. So that makes me very happy. So I'm glad to be here.
And Lily, do you want to introduce yourself? If anyone who knows Hagit Sten, I believe this is her mother-in-law. And otherwise, it's okay if you just want to be a fly on the wall. Alana, are you back to introduce yourself? You are currently muted. But Lily, go
Can
for
you
it.
hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we're just gonna have Lily introduce herself first.
Okay.
I'm Lily Lang. I'm Hagit Sten's mother-in-law, and I'm joining you from Israel because I enjoy your activities, and whenever we've visited the children, we've always managed to do something at the congregation, and I'm happy to be here.
So glad to have you. And Alana, take it away.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Longtime member. I think this is my 40th year, but I'm always looking to learn. So, I think I've been to every lunch and learn we've ever had. So looking forward to it.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen so that we can all see together. Just give me one moment. Share. Okay. Can everyone see my PowerPoint presentation? Okay,
Yes.
great. Sherry gave me a thumbs up. All right, I'm getting set up. If I ever look like I'm not looking at you, it's just because I have two screens. And we are recording and live streaming our class today so that folks who can't attend can check it out later. So I just want you to know that as we decide how we're going to participate today. And I really do hope that this will be an interactive learning experience. The class is on a text called MISHNAH TAANIT, which I'll explain in just a moment. But the theme is why we fast. And you might at first wonder why we're talking about this topic when most of us really only have fasting on our radar, maybe once a year. We'll talk about that in a moment. But we did just have a major fast day last week. We'll talk about that. But really the lessons of this text, I think, speak to where we are in this very moment, meaning in a pandemic, when so much of our lives feels out of control. How do we try to gain a sense of control over our environment and all that feels like it's spinning out? So we're definitely gonna, if at any time a word is used that you don't recognize or understand, please let me know. I am going to go through some vocabulary as we go. And the very first thing is, what in the world is the Mishnah? So The Mishnah was actually a very revolutionary kind of teaching. Originally, it was transmitted orally, and the name actually comes from this word to repeat. And so basically, our early rabbis would give these teachings, and their students would repeat it back at them. They lived in a world of memorization. These were scholars who had the entire Hebrew Bible memorized as well. And so we're going to constantly see them referring back to those biblical stories because they had such a facility with the text. And it wasn't compiled. It was all of these different teachings by different early rabbis, but it wasn't compiled and edited until around the year 200, attributed to one of the leaders known as Yehuda Hanassi. And of course, I spelled his name wrong. 1 second. Okay. We got live time corrections. And then it is mostly considered to be a legal document. What it does is take the laws that are found in the Torah and organizes them by topic. So if you want to learn about the laws of Shabbat and you're using the Torah as your core text, you have to start in the book of Genesis, then you skip ahead a little bit to Exodus, and you probably have to skip ahead again, and you have to really know where to look. So what's so revolutionary about the Mishnah is that it is organized by topic. So it makes it much easier to find what you're looking for. Although, rabbis get off on tangents. Sometimes they tell stories. So even though it is organized by topic, you're not always going to find exactly what you're looking for right away because, the rabbis tend to wander off. But the specific topic we're looking at, TAANIT in Hebrew, that's the name of the tractate, and it's found in the section of the Mishnah, the Seder, or the order called Moed, which is for special occasions. So the big umbrella category are special times and occasions. The subcategory is TAANIT. And we'll talk in just a moment about exactly what TAANIT means. Actually, you know what? I'm going to just go out of my own order. There we go. And okay, we'll do it now. So there's two different Hebrew words that are used for fasting. The word we're really harping on right now is ta'anit. And later on in today's class, we'll see a little bit of a play on word with ta'anit. But the word you may be more familiar with is tzom. This is the word we hear on Yom Kippur. Yom Tzom Kippur, Yom Tzom Kippur, a day of fasting for atonement. Tzom is often associated with major fasts. And so that would be like on Yom Kippur or last week on Tisha B'Av, the 9th of the month of Av, where we have a 25-hour fast because you need to start fasting before the sun fully sets, and then you can't break your fast until you see the 3 stars in the sky. It's a serious fast. Those are the only 2 of those kinds of large fasts that I'm familiar with. Usually we see minor fasts, and ta'anit usually refers. You'll more often see the word ta'anit with other kinds of fasts. You wouldn't see the word ta'anit when we're talking about Yom Kippur or Tisha B'Av. And a minor fast, we're going to see how this plays out in the text. It can look a number of different ways, but usually it just talks about fasting while the sun is up.
Will we get a copy of these slides of these?
I would be delighted to share.
That would be great.
Got it. All right, so I'm just going to make a note. So when class is over, I need to take attendance. All right, we'll take care of that. So that's a little bit of vocabulary. Now, question for the group. We already talked about 2 of them, but do you know of other times of the year when we fast on the Jewish calendar? So we talked about Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, which was last week. It was the day commemorating the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, not once, but twice. And those are the 2 major fasts. Alan.
The day leading to the first day of night of Passover, the firstborn is supposed to fast.
Okay, so it's called Ta'anit Bechorot, and that literally means the fast of the firstborns. So yes, the firstborn sons of the family are supposed to fast the day leading up to the Seder in remembrance of the plague and the oppression that the firstborn saw. Evelyn.
Fast of Esther before
Aha.
Purim.
That's right. Ta'anit Esther. So in the book of Esther, Esther fasts before she goes to ask King Ahasuerus to save the Jews. And we can, that absolutely ties into our theme. Why did she fast? But in remembrance of her fast, we also are supposed to fast. Sherry.
Not sure the exact date. It's either the 17th, 19th of Tammuz.
Som
The
Tammuz.
siege of Jerusalem.
So here it's actually, we see the word Som, even though it's a minor fast. Som Tammuz is, I do believe, the 18th. Oh, hold on now. I've got to check myself.
I can.
I'm going to look right now. It won't take me very long. So this is a day in the history of the Jewish people where I believe the walls were breached in Jerusalem. So it was the beginning of the end. And yep, so, Som Tammuz is the 17th of Tammuz.
I said between this, it's 3 weeks before Tisha B'Av.
Yeah, so 17th of the month. Okay, great.
It
Any
starts
other
the
days
3
we are?
weeks.
Yep. And so Ta'anit Bechorot and Ta'anit Esther commemorate fasts that we find in the Bible. Som Tammuz commemorates a historical event. So when the walls of Jerusalem were breached. So Yom Kippur is a biblical holiday. Tisha B'Av is a rabbinic holiday. So there's a number of different reasons why we have fasts on the calendar. No, does anyone know of any other times of year when we fast? Around Rosh Hashanah, there's a holiday called, or there's a fast day called Som Gedalia, also a historical fast. I'm trying to think if I know of others. And those are the big ones. But in the Reform movement, it's very rare that we see folks practicing the minor fasts. If I had to guess, that's more a function of that they commemorate historical events that the Reform movement has been less enamored of remembering. So, so for example, the early reformers really were trying to get away from the centrality of the temple in Jerusalem. So nobody would fast on Tisha B'Av in classical Reform Judaism, because that's a holiday that's really rooted not only in temple times, but also in lots of bad things that have happened to the Jewish people. And the Reform movement said, we want to get away from this language of victimhood. You know, to the best of my knowledge, really the only fast that really stuck for a lot of Reform Judaism has been Yom Kippur. Alan.
Som Gedalia, is that because of the killing of Gedalia? Is that what that's about?
Mm-hmm. I always forget, even though I write about it every year in the bulletin when it comes up. I can bring that up in a moment.
Yeah, he was the first governor of after the fall of Jerusalem by the Babylonians. He was in charge of. He was appointed governor, and then he was assassinated.
Right, another historical fast day. Here we go. Som Gedalia commemorates the assassination of Gedaliah ben Achikam. After the Babylonians conquered Jerusalem and destroyed the first temple, King Nebuchadnezzar appointed Gedaliah as governor of Judah. His assassination a few months later marked the end of Jewish self-government in Jerusalem and the dispersion of the Jews remaining in Jerusalem. Minor fast day. And this happens, I want to say it's the day after Rosh Hashanah. Yeah, looks about right. So after the second day of Rosh Hashanah, because we can't be fasting on Rosh Hashanah. We want to be celebrating instead. Okay. So there are fast days already programmed into the Jewish calendar. They are sprinkled throughout the year for various reasons. We already talked about what some of those are. But where we're going to start in the Mishnah does not talk about these already prescribed fast days. They're going to talk about ad hoc fast days. Any guesses as to why our ancestors would have felt the need to fast when it wasn't already programmed into the schedule, let's say? Vivian.
When they wanted rain.
Aha! It says, if I planted you. Okay. On to the next slide we go. 1 second to get there. Okay. When we wanted rain. Who would like to read this text in English? This is the very first Mishnah, the very first teaching in Mishnah Ta'anit. Any volunteers to read in English? Fran, go for it.
And when do they mention the powers of bringing rain? Rabbi Elazar says, from the first day of the festival of Sukkot. Rabbi Joshua says, on the last day of the festival of Sukkot. Rabbi Joshua said to him, since rain on the festival is nothing but a sign of God's curse, why should he mention it? Rabbi Eleazar said to him, I also did not say to request rain, but to make mention. He causes the wind to blow and the rain to fall in its due season. He replied to him, if so, one should at all times make mention.
Okay, so we launch right into what feels like the middle of a conversation. The rabbis love to do this. What in the world are we talking about here? Any thoughts, ideas? Sherry.
Sukkot is the time when we start praying for rain in Jerusalem.
How do we know that?
From the summer to the winter insert.
You remember which prayer?
Morit HaGashem. Can I have my Siddur with me?
I put it up for you.
Mashiach HaRuach Morit HaGashem.
Okay, the prayer book that we have today, we have to remember, was not yet formed in Mishnah times. So what we're seeing is the Mishnah starting to talk about liturgy, and we have the rubric for the prayer that we'll go into a further depth in just a moment. But they're sort of tease it out. We think of the prayer book as an already published document, and in the Orthodox world, what's in those prayer books has been around for quite some time. So what we have here is the formulation of liturgy, and in this case, specifically for rain. So the question becomes, where do we add this special line that we'll take a look at? Exactly at what point do we add this line in? And of course,
after the introduction is first line of the.
No, sorry, what time of year? So the line, what we have here, and this is taken from Mishkan Tefillah, the prayer book that we use in our congregation, the latest Reform prayer book for Shabbat and weekdays. It says in winter and in summer. But what does that mean? So we have to remember that this is specific to the land of Israel. This is not the seasons as we experience them in New Jersey, but the seasons as they are experienced in the land of Israel. And when is the rainy season? Winter in Israel. And why is rain so important, especially in ancient Israel? What is at stake here?
Well, crops, food.
Yes. You can't grow food if you don't have enough rain. And if you have too much rain, that's not good either. You need just the right amount of rain to grow enough food for everyone to survive.
It has to come at the right time in the growing season.
That is correct.
When you're trying to harvest, that's no good either.
Right, exactly. So we've got it has to be timed sensitively. What I gave you here is I gave you the entire Hebrew text of the whole prayer. In the English translation, I just gave you up through those inserted lines. So the very first bit is, you are forever mighty Adonai, you give life to all. In the winter, we're supposed to pray, you cause the wind to shift and rain to fall, because that's when we want it to rain. And in the summer, you rain dew upon us. A couple of different things at play here. First, you are not supposed to pray anything in vain. So partly is that, at least while you're growing certain crops, you don't want it to rain too much. So maybe summer's not a good time to pray for rain. But the other piece of this is, you're not going to pray when you're pretty confident it's not going to rain. So for example, when I was in rabbinical school in Jerusalem, I learned that a lot of Jewish weddings, Jews from England plan their weddings in Israel, because unlike England, where it rains much of the time, you can plan a wedding between Passover and Sukkot in Israel and be pretty much guaranteed beautiful sunny skies. So there's a huge industry for Jews specifically from England to get married in Israel, just because of weather, because it's so consistent. Sherry, go for it.
I know in the art school, they don't have the summer Morid Hatal. It's not included.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And the Reform prayer books did not include these lines until the latest. So partly because classical Reform Judaism really wanted to decentralize the focus of Israel, because these lines are specific to the land of Israel. As the Reform movement became more and more Zionist, more connected to the land of Israel and the modern state, they reintroduced the lines. But here we see the liturgy as we have it today. And what we're seeing in this text is they're trying to wrestle with, when does this start? So the question at hand is, when should that special line we just saw be added or switched over? Okay, so there's a debate. One person says when the festival of Sukkot begins, and the other one says when the festival of Sukkot ends. What is the sticky point here? What is the concern if we start praying for rain on the first day of the festival?
Well, you have people all over the world. The weather is different.
I think we don't want to get rained on during the festival.
So I love that they use the language of God's curse, but I think it's that this is a pilgrimage festival where the entire Jewish people are supposed to come to the temple in Jerusalem to offer their sacrifice. Nobody wants to schlep around in the rain. So is it as simple as we shouldn't pray for rain until the festival is over, and then great, wonderful, fabulous? The only issue is there was a water splashing ritual, for lack of a better word, at the end of this holiday of Sukkot. So you need to have enough water there to do this water ritual, but you don't want everyone to be schlepping around in the rain and getting muddy and cranky and all of that. Evelyn, did you raise your hand?
I did. Do they in the days of the rabbi, didn't they build their own Sukkot? And
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And isn't that porous on top? And if it rained, it would be soggy.
Right. I mean, yeah. We regularly celebrate Sukkot in the rain in New Jersey. It would be so much lovelier if we were in Israel when it's not really raining that much yet. Okay. So that's the first Mishnah. Let's go on to the next Mishnah. Who'd like to read now? Go for it, Frank.
They don't pray for rain except close to the rainy season. Rabbi Judah says, one who goes down before the ark on the last day of Sukkot, the last one mentions rain. The first does not. On the first day of Pesach, the first mentions, the last does not. Up until when do they request rain? Rabbi Judah says, until Pesach is over. Rabbi Meyer says, until Nisan is over, as it says, now God makes the rain fall in the first month, early rain and late rain.
All right, we are getting into the nitty-gritty here, but we have to remember that both Sukkot and Pesach, when celebrated in the land of Israel, are 7-day festivals. So the question becomes, okay, we know that Sukkot is generally the start of the rainy season and Pesach is generally the end of the rainy season, but when should we start, when should we switch these lines over? So I'm going back here. The winter line and the summer line, the rabbis always love when we're on the border, because that's the interesting part. Like, when does it actually make the switch? So again, if we go with the theory that we don't want to get rained on when we're doing a pilgrimage festival, the very first one, so think about the children of Israel are lined up to go to the ark on the last day of Sukkot. The very first people in line, they're not praying for rain. It's only the very last guy in line, he gets to pray for rain. That's the moment where you switch over, the last person in line to get into the ark. And then the reverse is true at Pesach. the first line of folks in the line, they're all praying for rain, and the very last one, he's the last one to say, okay, now it's summertime. All right. Mishnah 3. Who wants to read this?
Rabbi,
Al, go for it.
so you stop paying for rain on the last day of Pesach, or the
That
first?
actually does refute our theory about the good weather on Pesach.
It's the first day. Yeah.
So,
So people are walking, coming up, walking in the rain to go to.
Oh no, it's the first day of Pesach. So you might get one rainy day.
Okay. So the first day of Pesach, you stop praying for rain.
So yeah, the first people on the first day of Pesach pray for rain, and the very last person in line does not.
Okay. But that's on the first day.
That's just the first day. Yep. So then you would theoretically have a lovely rest of the holiday. Sherry.
I'm
Sherry?
looking.
Oh, you're
I'm
looking.
looking it up.
What are you looking for? Aha. Okay, great.
It says first day is to pray for Morid Hatau, and I'm trying to see where rain comes in.
Well, I can tell you what our prayer book says.
Yeah, I know.
I'm pretty sure it's what we just read. So the Giverot prayer in Mishkan HaTfilah, they tell us that winter starts Shmini Atzeret or Simchat Torah, depending
Yeah,
on
Shmini Atzeret is what I have in here.
But what it does, and it just says to Pesach, so it doesn't tell us when during Pesach. But it does say the last day of the fall festival.
Yes, the Shmini Atzeret, and then the first day of Pesach.
First day of Pesach. All right, which makes sense. My understanding was that this Mishnah is basically how the law goes. And you can see here, they throw in a verse from the prophet Joel, because you need to back up all of your legal statements with verses from the Bible. Okay, now we're shifting gears a little bit. Mishnah 3, who'd like to read? Sherry, you're unmuted. You want to read?
Okay. On the 3rd of Mar Cheshvan, they begin to ask for rain. Rabban Gamliel says, on the 7th, the 15th day after the festival of Sukkot, so that the last of the Jew reaches the river Euphrates.
Okay, we're going to talk about the calendar aspects in just a moment. Going back to, you want to have good weather when you're traveling. This is clearly written at a time where we had Jews who lived into Babylonia. At this point, it wasn't Babylonia, but basically modern day Iraq. We have Jews in the diaspora. So for all of the folks who had come from the diaspora to offer their sacrifice in Jerusalem, we want them to be able to get home without being inundated with rain. So I love that little argument at the end that we want to have good weather for the travelers. But here, let's now talk about the calendar. Okay, so this is what we've discussed so far.
Rabbi?
Yes.
This was written around 200.
It was compiled in 200.
But there was no temple then, so people were not pilgrimaging then.
Right. So it was compiled in the year 200. Most of the rabbis mentioned lived contemporaneously with the temple, although not all. And we have to remember, the first temple was destroyed in 586. And then within less than 100 years, the second temple was rebuilt.
Right.
So the rabbis who wrote the Mishnah are all operating under the assumption that, hopefully we'll do the same exact thing, relatively quick turnaround. We need all of these laws because as soon as we're back in the building, to use the parlance of our times, right? We need to know what we need to do. So these rabbis were pretty confident that the hope is there. And also this is where we start getting messianic inspiration. Oh, the Messiah will come and save us and restore our temple. We know on the back end, it's not happening so quickly. And, but they still needed this. Actually, when Maimonides, who lived in the year 1100, was compiling his Mishnah Torah, his book of law, so he was trying to make it even easier for people to study Jewish law, he decided to include the laws of sacrifice just in case we would need it. And this was in the year 1100. So the temple had already been destroyed for over 1,000 years, but you know, hope runs deep in our veins. But not everyone else who compiled a book of Jewish law did keep the laws of sacrifice. So it really depended on the rabbi. Okay, so here we've gotten 4 different possibilities of when we might start praying for rain. Do we pray for rain on the first day of the holiday of Sukkot? Do we pray for rain on the last day of the holiday of Sukkot? Or do we wait till the following month? And is it the 3rd of the month or the 7th of the month? So we have 4 different opinions floating around. You know, the rabbis love to argue it out. The term used for the month of Cheshvan, Mar Cheshvan, is Mar means bitter. And the rabbis called it a bitter month because there were no Jewish holidays in it. Today, I could buy a t-shirt that says rabbis love Mar Cheshvan because by the time Cheshvan rolls around, we're exhausted and really grateful to have no holidays for a whole month before we gear up for Hanukkah. So for some folks, bitter is other people's sweet. Okay. Who would like to read Mishnah 4, where we start to hear some of the aspects of what it's not just about not eating. Fasting has a whole host of rituals associated with it. Who would like to read this one? Laura, go for it.
If the 17th of Mar Heshvan came and no rain fell, individuals begin to fast 3 fasts. They eat and drink after it gets dark, and they are permitted to do work, to bathe, to anoint themselves with oil, to wear shoes, and to have marital relations.
Okay. Here we see the beginning of the ad hoc fasts. In this case, why are we fasting?
Rain.
Because we need the rain. Now we're talking about the 17th of the month of Cheshvan. This is over a full month since Sukkot started. Sukkot starts on the 15th of Tishrei. So more than a full month since the holiday of Sukkot started, and it's not looking good for rain. This is the first warning sign. We're in trouble. So who is doing the fasting here? This is important to note. Individuals. Sherry, did you want to say something?
Yeah, it's interesting to notice it's 3 weeks after the end of Sukkot before they can fast. And in the summer, you have the 3 weeks between the 17th of Tammuz and Tisha B'Av that lead up to the major fast. This leads up to the minor fast.
Oh, wow. So yeah, that's really interesting.
I'm into Gematria. I'm into numbers.
So were the ancient rabbis. As you can tell, they love the number 7. They love the number 3. We're going to even get 10 in there. So absolutely. So I don't think that's an accident. But here, this is an individual fast. This is not yet a communal fast. And what is unique about this fast? They can still take care of themselves. Don't forget, if this fast doesn't work, there's going to be another one. We don't want a bunch of stinky Jews. And life has to go on, so they have to be able to procreate. And bathing definitely helps the procreating. So, among the rules of fasting are not, it's like I said, it's not just not eating, but it's also not drinking. So when we fast in Jewish tradition, both of those things are off the table. And there are some fast days that are work days, and there are some fast days that are not work days. A major fast is not a work day. So we're not supposed to work on Yom Kippur. But actually, now that I think about it, Tisha B'Av, which is a major fast, is a work day. So I take it back. So it has nothing to do with whether it's major or minor. So Yom Kippur is not a work day, but just about all the others are. So we still have to do our business.
But the other laws of fasting do apply on Tisha B'Av. They
Correct.
don't bathe, anoint with oil,
Right.
wear shoes, or have marital relations.
Correct. And it says wear shoes, but really it's really leather. You're not supposed to wear leather. I have to go look at the Hebrew just to double check, but I'm pretty sure that that's just a stand-in. Evelyn, go for it.
Does this have anything to do with like Ramadan, where they fast all day and then they eat at night and make merry? And
same idea. So very similar idea, that they basically do a month-long minor fast. So when I say, and I'm using the language of Judaism, a minor fast is when you stop eating when the sun comes up and you can start eating again when the sun goes down. Same practice for Ramadan. I'd be curious to talk to my imam friend about how many of these rules also apply when they're fasting. And I do believe they have minor fast days as well in Muslim tradition. But every different religion fasts for different reason. Ramadan is a separate situation, but yes, very similar in that it's the sunlight hours you're not supposed to eat. Vivian.
And during Ramadan, you can't eat until it's dark.
Right.
It's like you have to, when you can't tell a white thread from a black thread, then you can eat.
I love it. We have similar language in Jewish tradition about how do you know that the sun comes up, where you can tell the blue thread in your tzitzit, on your talit, the fringes on the prayer shawl, from the white threads. Same idea. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to remember the anointing themselves with oil. This is ancient perfume. So another way to be less stinky, because we also have to remember if we're in the Middle East, it's a hot place, and that's why we have so much incense in the Middle East even to today. That's to avoid the stink. And then the leather piece is it's a sign of wealth, and we also refrain from wearing leather when we're in mourning. So there's a lot of overlap between mourning rituals and fasting rituals, often because there's an element of mourning involved in fasting. Here, there's a lot of fear as to what the future holds. And we're anticipating the mourning that could be coming. And so I think there's no accident that there's a lot of overlap there. Any questions before I move on to the next slide? Okay. All right, Mishnah 5. Who'd like to read? Go for it, Frank. And then Fran, you'll get the next one.
If Rosh Chodesh Kislev came and no rain fell, the court ordains upon the community 3 fasts. They may eat and drink while it is still dark, and it is permissible to do work, to bathe, to anoint oneself with oil, to wear shoes, and to have marital relations.
Okay, what has changed from the last slide to this slide? Alan.
It's community now, not the individual. It's everybody.
Okay, so the big shift is now we're all in the same boat together.
And it's 3 days.
And still 3 fasts. So the first one was individuals and 3 fasts. Now we're at community and 3 fasts. And now we're in the following Hebrew month. So the Jewish New Year's in Tishrei. Then we went into Mar Cheshvan, that bitter month of Cheshvan. Now we're in Kislev. So now we're even further away from when the rainy season was supposed to start, and we're getting even more anxious about this. But the rest of the rules, but the rest of the rules are the same. Okay. Now we're upping the ante. Fran, if you would.
If these passed and there was no answer, the court decrees 3 more fasts on the community. They may eat and drink only while it is still day. They may not work, bathe, anoint themselves with oil, wear shoes, or have marital relations. And the bathhouses are closed. If these passed and there was no answer, the court decrees upon the community a further 7, making a total of 13. These are greater than the first, for on these they blast the shofar and they lock the shops. On Mondays, the shutters of the shops are opened a little when it gets dark, but on Thursdays they are permitted the whole day because of the Shabbat.
So here we have a much much stricter fast. This is communal, and it's like if the first leg doesn't work, then we have a second leg to fall back on. Here it seems that the eating and drinking has flipped. So you can only, I double checked the Hebrew. So it looks like you can only eat and drink while the sun is out. It sounds to me like the only thing you should be doing in this period of time is praying for rain. And you eat to survive. But basically now we can't wear leather. We can't have marital relations. There's no bathing of any kind. We've hit the level where the stink is required. We really need to get in and start praying really hard for rain. And we can't go about our regular business because that needs to be our primary business, because we won't be able to have a business. Let's say I have a shop if I don't have food to eat. Alan, you look deep in thought.
No, when I was looking, I was just thinking about the rest of it, but I looked at the reversal and you brought that out already. About eating and drinking during the day and instead of at night.
Yeah, which is strange and not something I'm particularly familiar with, but it seems that they flipped it. My guess is because we've hit a new stage in the fasting process.
Well, maybe because the other one didn't work. Maybe they'll try, let's do the opposite. The opposite may work.
Right. Let's try this now. Right. Mixing it up.
Yeah.
All right. We are perfect on time. We're going to do the last Mishnah in the first chapter. That'll be a perfect place for us to stop for next time. All right. Mishnah 7. Who'd like to read this one? Vivian, go for it.
If these passed and there was still no answer, then they restrict engaging in business and in building, planting, betrothal, and marriage, and in greeting one another, as if they were people undesirable to God. The individuals go back to fasting anew until the end of Nisan. If Nisan passes and the rain falls, this is a sign of a curse, as it is written. It is the season of the wheat harvest. I will pray to the Eternal, and God will send thunder and rain. Then you will take thought and realize what a wicked thing you did in the sight of the Eternal when you asked for a king.
Whew. Okay, let's parse out exactly what's happening here. If all of these fasts had taken place and there was still no answer, this is where the Mishnah gets a little poetic. So the word TAANIT refers to a fast, but it comes from the word to afflict. So for example, I do believe that in the Bible, the word we regularly see for rape is from the same root. I'm not saying that fasting and sexual assault are equivalent, but just to give you a sense of how the word is used. But here the rabbis are asking about answering, which happens to be the same root. So I love this, that the whole point of a ta'anit is to get an answer from God in the form of rain. So here, that's a little bit of beautiful poetry going on there. But here we have individuals go back to fasting anew. But what are the further restrictions. I mean, these are all things that are looking towards the future. So we talked about the engaging in business, but don't build, don't plant, don't get married, because we may not live to see any of these things take fruition. We have to remember, this is an existential crisis that the community is facing. A drought could kill entire communities. So this is really serious, is what's going on here. Then we get back to individual fasting. My guess is, Joe Schmo is going to fast week A, and then his neighbor is going to fast week B, and then his neighbor is going to so. It seems to me that the individual fasting is sort of a shared experience. So we're not all doing it at the same time together. If we have to go fasting until Nisan, the month of Nisan, that's a lot of months. So we started in Tishrei, Cheshvan, we got anxious, Kislev even anxiouser. But now we have Tevet, Shvat, Adar, Nisan. I mean, this is a lot of months. So we can't all be fasting for 6 months. That's not possible. So I think that's why we go back to the individuals fasting. So we're going to share the burden by fasting sort of on our own time. So the language we're using in the Zoom world is asynchronistic learning, So anyone who couldn't join us on Zoom today can watch the YouTube later on their own time. So basically that's what's happening in these intermediate months. But basically, if it hasn't rained by Nisan, that we can safely assume it's not going to rain that calendar year. But if it does rain on Nisan after all of those months of no rain, it is a bad sign. And what is the purpose of this verse? Why do the rabbis bring it in here? So this goes back to when the people clamored to the prophet Samuel saying, we want a king. We need a king to rule us. At that point, we had judges. There was a loose affiliation between the 12 tribes. But the people said they wanted a king, and they picked King Saul, who did not find favor ultimately in God's eyes. So here Samuel is saying, this is what you get for asking for a king. But why this verse, besides the fact that it talks about thunder and rain? Frank.
Is it because you can't harvest wheat in the rain?
Right. So the rain, especially thunder and rain, could ruin the wheat harvest. So this is a really bad thing. But what is the implication for the Jews of that community that this is the verse being brought in? Sherry.
Is God punishing them?
Aha. Sherry, is that what you were going to say?
More or less because they didn't accept God as the King of Kings. They wanted a human to rule over them.
Right. So that was the sin of that community. But exactly what Alana said, the rabbis bring this verse in as a suggestion. Is it something you all did to deserve this lack of rain? So we have to remember, we have entered the rabbinic imagination. We're going to wrestle with the concepts as we're trying to figure out what we're doing as we're wrestling with where we are today ourselves. I just want to put on the table that I do not share the ancient rabbis' theological outlook that bad things happen because we did bad things. But we want to enter this imaginative space because that is how they understood the world. So there is a suggestion here that maybe it was our bad behavior that resulted in this lack of rain. And so what do we need to do differently to change our situation? So that is where we're going to end for today. We're wrestling with this. So I want to remind everybody. And we have to decide for ourselves, how do we respond when bad things happen that are out of our control? Rain is still a thing, which we learned yesterday, that we can't control. We cannot control the weather. We can go to the moon, but we cannot control the weather.
That's right.
So, and we cannot control viruses. as hard as we're trying. Frank, go ahead.
I think we can control viruses. We'll get there. But it seems to me that this may be linked to the guilt complex. I agree with you about this. What do? We have to obey. Otherwise, we're accused of doing something right, and that's why it didn't rain. So it would be our fault.
So while I disagree with the ancient forebears that one thing caused another, where I think there's some really beautiful teaching in here is, can bad stuff happening that's out of our control inspire us to right action? And what does that look like?
But that relinks your behavior to an outcome that you have no control over.
Say more about that.
I think this is a logical contradiction. We're not responsible for certain things, and we shouldn't be blamed for them. But if those things happen, we should change our behavior as if we were responsible, not the good reason that I think is intended for us. We should do the good things because they are good things to do.
And when we started to go into shelter in place, the best advice I heard for how do I deal with the anxiety, the uncertainty, the fear I'm feeling is, what are things that I can do in this moment? And especially what are things that I can do to improve somebody else's situation? And that's why we talked so much as a community about who wants to help grocery shop, because there are people who want to just do something and they want to do something like I needed to put this energy to good use. And then there were people who needed it. So we were like, how do we match those things up? Because people who are helping someone else can feel as if they have not only control over their situation, but are actually making it better. So, you know, what we're going to continue to explore in the next 2 weeks are, how does our tradition help us to respond to situations that are out of our control, that are ultimately not our fault, but what are the rituals that we can perform to sort of give us structure, and then what are the actions that we can take to move forward? Frank.
I think that is beautiful, and the linking of us in the time of plague, where there are things out of our control. It's not necessarily our fault. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. But if others can do something good, you alleviate the affliction for someone else. That's a good thing.
Right.
A really good thing.
Absolutely. And I also want to end with this graphic, because we have to remember that it's a cycle. So the hope is that we will make it through whatever we're in right now, to get back to the beginning of the year, and that there will be another cycle, and that the next cycle will be better. What I'm hearing from a lot of people is, thanks 2020, you know, especially after yesterday, it just feels like we're being inundated, but we know, but like the people are hanging on to 2021, you know, like maybe in January it'll be better. And having our eye on the cycle of time, I think, is really helpful for humans, that this too shall pass. And how do we get through it as best as we can? And how do we get through it together? You know, sometimes we do it individually and sometimes we do it communally, and the tradition vacillates between the two.
Can I ask one question? Yeah, no, I just something that hit me as I was listening was the comment that our hopes and prayers are with people. I very rarely tell people that I'm praying for them, because I mean, I would never do that, because I don't think that means anything. And it's some of this, as we were going through this, I kept coming back to that comment that people often make when, you know, hopes and prayers are not enough. And that whole idea of actually doing something. If hopes and prayers help you reflect on what it is that you can do, not necessarily to solve the problem, but to alleviate the pain that people are going through. But hopes and prayers are just, they're air, they're nothing.
Right. And I think you really hit the nail on the head, that they can be a helpful tool for us to reflect, and they can be a helpful tool to bring us together as a community. But if it ends there, it's not enough.
Yeah. Can I quote Rabbi Wisnia here?
Sure,
Prayers
please.
don't change things. Prayers change people. People change things. That's going to be on his tombstone, he said.
I was waiting for that, Alana.
Yeah.
Or as God told Moses at the sea, this is not the time for prayer. This is the time for action.
Right, right, right. Very nice.
Thank you all for joining me.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi.
Same time, same Zoom channel next Wednesday at 12. And hopefully we'll have some more folks who have their power back next week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.